I haven't been on YouTube for a while, just like for leisure. So I decided to hop back on. And one of the first things that comes up on my For You page is a video by Edvasion. I watch him from time to time. I don't think it would be fair to call myself a fan because I don't watch him all that often. But I've seen a couple of his videos. They're pretty interesting. He was talking about something called performative snacking. I put my phone down and was like, you know what? I think it's time for a walk. I did end up watching it though. So ultimately, the video was addressing this strange upcoming trend, which I have only been just made aware of people packing very small portions of food into little snack packages, like little Altoid tins and just very small containers. People would show themselves packing it up, putting like 2 almonds and a piece of cheese in there, closing it up and saying, this is my snack for later, and posting it online. And as per usual, like with every discourse, there are a lot of debates and debacles and talk going on about it. Some people don't see the problem about it. Some people think it could promote EDs. I'm not gonna lie to you, I didn't care enough about the discourse in this one. I didn't have it in me. But what I wanted to focus on is primarily the performative aspect of this trend. The phrase performatism itself has gotten really popular over the past few months and years, arguably, but performative to perform, to do things with the sole purpose of being seen by others, wanting to get attention and validation from other people. You hear this phrase be used a lot in something like performative activism, where people will pretend to fight for a civil issue by doing superficial things like throwing a Black Lives Matter quote in your bio or putting an LGBTQ flag in your room, but really doing nothing to uphold those standards and actually fight for those causes, in whichever way that would look like protest, boycotting, talking about online, whatever. Or sometimes people would just be straight up hypocritical and say Black Lives Matter but be blatantly racist. Or for another example, I actually made a video on this when it came to thrifting and people over shopping when it comes to thrifting, and how the whole point of thrifting was to promote more eco-friendly ways of buying clothes, promoting less overconsumption and unnecessary buying of an unnecessary amount of clothes. So you buy secondhand, better for the environment, better for your wallet, right? All that good stuff. But then you have some people kind of missing the plot and then going there buying a bunch of clothes because it's cheap and trendy and cute. It kind of defeats the purpose, because the whole point is to go there and shop with intentionality. But they're going there without an intent, without fully understanding what the point of doing this in the first place is. So it ends up being performative. Recently, you also had the performative male, guys who pretended to care about women's rights and women's struggles just to pander to them. Or even things like the analog trend, another thing that I ended up talking about a couple of videos back, where people are saying they're going offline, they're going back to old technology, they're escaping the matrix, but then they post their whole journey on TikTok. And just for the record, performatism, or using that phrase, of course, the word performative has definitely been overused, especially recently, because some people will accuse other people of being performative when it may not be the case. So it is kind of a term you need to be careful with using, especially before you go accusing random people of acting performative. But the interesting part about these performative actions is the reason why people do them, which is primarily to gain validation from other people, and in what ways people are willing to gain that validation from other people. This little performative snacking trend kind of reminds me of a trend, I don't know if it's still a thing or people still do it, but it reminds me of those girls that make those pretty ice cube restock videos where they make ice cubes that are like basically cocktails in themselves. I mean, they've got like rose petals in them, they got 3 different types of juices, they're in the shapes of roses and balls and squares, so they record themselves doing it and they post it online. The sole purpose is for people to see it and to see you doing it and to get some form of reaction from people, whether it be in person or online. And it's not like these things are necessarily harmful or bad. Is it practical to spend 30 minutes like every day restocking some pretty looking ice just for it to melt in your drink anyway? I mean, probably not. But if I went to somebody's house and they served me iced tea with the ice cubes being shaped as roses and them having rose petals in them and juice in them and it looking really cool, would I be delighted? Yes. Absolutely. So not necessarily that it's bad or anything, it's just the concept that's interesting, because it's one of the biggest reasons why I argue against this very common mantra that people love to use of not needing validation from other people, not caring about what other people think. I understand the reason that people say it, and I too was one of those people who would kind of regurgitate that phrase a lot, especially when I was younger, because in theory it sounds great, but I have a completely different perception of it now that I have learned how psychological processes work. That phrase is a lot easier said than done, because we as humans need validation and feedback from other people. There's a lot of psychology that goes into this, as well as philosophy if you want to get a little bit existential, which we will later on in the video. But this is why it seems so hard for people to stop, because it is. I can't tell you the amount of times I'll see videos like the performative snacking video or any other video that touches on the idea of like wanting attention from other people, and everybody in the comments is always clowning on these people and being like, oh my gosh, like they just need to learn not to need validation from other people. Why is that so hard? Because it is hard to stop. And you can see that in the way that people are constantly craving it, constantly looking for it. All of of these internet trends and trends that manifest themselves into the real world are a testament to this, to how much validation is important to us as humans.
Thanks, Roger. Our top story tonight, a guilty plea from the man known around the world as the North Pond Hermit. Christopher Knight lived in the woods of central Maine for years without speaking to anyone for nearly 3 decades. He stole to survive. That's according to law enforcement officials.
Yeah, the story gained international attention because it seemed really so unbelievable. But today, Christopher Knight dealt with the consequences of his actions.
In 1986, a man named Christopher Knight completely left his life behind to go do what basically every person at one point in their life has fantasized doing, running away from society to go live in the woods. He quit his job, he left his family, didn't tell anybody, drove off into the woods until his car ran out of gas, and just completely walked away from everything. I remember first hearing about this story in my sociology class that I took last summer. It was an online class. It was in a textbook that I had to read. It was going over a chapter about society and culture or something like that, I think. And it had me thinking for a while after I read it because it was just so fascinating to me. And I also knew I wanted to talk about this in a video. It was so interesting for me to hear this story, but not only that, to hear what Christopher had to say about living completely alone for 27 years. He talked about how after a while, it didn't really feel like isolation to him, but more so the bonding of him and his environment. But it ended up getting to a point where he didn't even know who or what he was. He said something interesting in an interview he did with a journalist, and I'm gonna read it bar for bar. He said, quote, "Solitude bestows an increase in something valuable. I can't dismiss that idea. Solitude increased my perception, but here's the tricky thing. When I applied my increased perception to myself, I lost my identity. There was no audience, no one to perform for. There was no need to define myself. I became irrelevant." When you truly live without validation, this is what it starts to look like. You completely lose your sense of self because that sense of self was derived from other people. When that's gone, you basically devolve into your simplest form of an animal. And whether you believe that's a good thing or not is obviously up for debate. That's not necessarily a bad thing or a good thing depending on your perception of life. As I said before, a lot of us have fantasized going off into the woods and living alone and feeling that complete disconnect from reality. A lot of people may hear this story and actually be inspired, want to live like him. Going off the grid, living primal, not having to worry about other people, other opinions, the hustle and bustle of everyday life. That's probably one of the reasons why post-apocalyptic stories and movies are so popular and common. There's this constant longing to go back to simpler times. When you live in a world full of no one other than yourself, there's no one to get feedback from. There's no one to talk to, no one to share opinions with. There's nobody to even say your name. There is no longer any validation of your existence from other people. And everything that we created and gave value no longer has value. Money or any form of currency for that matter will no longer have value. In an apocalypse where there's nobody around, you could go to a dealership and steal a Ferrari if you want, but it's only going to be as useful as any other car because there's nobody around to appreciate the Ferrari. There's nobody to look at the amazing luxury car that you own. There's no one to justify that status that you have. There's nobody to give you that feedback or validation. You could take any clothes that you wanted, Gucci, Chanel, Louis Vuitton, again, with nobody around to give you the validation of having those high, pristine end clothing. It doesn't matter, it doesn't feel the same. The very concept of fashion itself will have no meaning. The clothes that you wear will only ever be as important to you as how it can aid you in your survival. It's just practical now. I can wear this to keep me warm at night when it's cold and keep me from burning up in the sun during the day. That's why in like every post-apocalyptic story or movie or book or whatever, all the characters always go for practical things. I mean, again, like duh, first of all, it's about survival, but that's exactly the point. They're only looking at practicality, at survival. The main characters don't care for luxury things and cool stuff anymore. The search for food, supplies, medicine, weapons, and stuff like that, that becomes a priority. Anything that is going to help you continue your species. You've basically become like every other animal in the wild. Another thing that Christopher said that fascinated me, he said, quote, "My desires dropped away. I didn't long for anything. I didn't even have a name. To put it romantically, I was completely free." Cheesy as it sounds, when you put it into perspective, it makes sense. There's nothing to long for if nobody had influenced you to buy something, or there's nothing to want if you don't have anyone to show it off to. Because that is ultimately the reason why we do things, because these things are status symbols. And not just economic status symbols, but in every other way that it matters to us. All of our customs that we create are meant to define each other. And sure, I'm not saying in like a post-apocalyptic setting, people still won't want those nice things. Some people may still want a nice car to drive around or cool clothes to wear, but it'll only ever be an extension of what life was like when there was people around to appreciate these things. How much you wanted those things when there were people around you to validate you. You're still operating on the memory of wanting validation from other people. Because, for example, if you happen to have a child during an apocalypse and they know absolutely nothing about luxury clothes, about cool cars, what products influencers used, what outfits celebrities were wearing, they aren't going to care for those types of things because they aren't going to understand it. It's a value that we learn as a result of society. And the only reason it has value in the first place is because we as people validated it. A big appeal of these types of stories when regarding Christopher and other people who try to escape the matrix and go off the grid. A big appeal of these stories is that loss of connection from society and its values and constructs, as it can feel freeing, at least depending on your personality. But for others, it can be almost horrifying, because you realize everything that made us human is gone. You have no external feedback to validate certain aspects of your existence, and it can leave you feeling somber and heavy and just overall confused. It's gaining your freedom as a result of losing your humanity and becoming, for lack of a better description, an animal. I told you this can get pretty existential, but I love that story so much because it puts into perspective how important validation is to us, how it makes us operate, how the constant need and want for attention isn't necessarily a crime, but a necessary psychological component that allows a society to thrive. And these small little micro trends are a byproduct of this component. However, people tend to misunderstand this fact and think that the problem lies within the function itself. So they demonize it. They tell you don't need validation from other people. You shouldn't care about what people think of you. When it's not the validation that's the issue, it's how you seek it and what you're willing to sacrifice to get it, and also who you're craving validation from as well. This term has gotten especially popular, I think, amongst women, whether it be like men telling women that they're looking for attention or whatever because they, I don't know, wear a certain outfit at the club, or whether it's other women telling other women that you shouldn't need validation from a man or something like that. When both of those scenarios are not necessarily crimes for what they're doing. Is it not normal for us to want attention from people that we like or admire or respect? So it ends up making women lie about what they truly want just to end up pleasing people either way. I've seen this happen with a sudden trend of women saying that they're no longer dressing for men, now they're dressing for the female gaze. They're gonna see what women like to wear and they're gonna dress for women now. But then other women still end up dogging on them and their outfits and ridiculing them. Just straight up being bullies, and then of course covering it with the guise of being a girl's girl.
So basically, if you go back to watch that video, Hailey was asking what outfit to wear. So there was option one with like a white tank top thing, and then the second one was her throwing on the green jumper with like green Air Forces or something like that. And people in the comments are being very honest because Hailey asked for an opinion in it, so she's gonna get our opinions. People are like in the comments, oh my god, why are you being so mean? Why are you being... No. And if you weren't fake talking about being girl's girl, being a girl's girl is actually telling a girl the truth and saying, babes, that is not it. You don't sit there and let her walk on road and she looks up.
It's like no matter what you do or who you listen to, you're doing it with the intention of getting someone's approval anyway. And that kind of ends up being the paradox of validation. Just the statement, I don't care what people think, means that you do care what people think because you're aware of the fact that other people are in fact thinking about you or could possibly think about you. Although I guess you could argue that when people say care, they mean like concern, like I'm not worried about what people think of me, like if it's in a negative light. But then that would still be having some level of awareness that other people are in fact thinking about you and perceiving you in some type of way. You are always doing something, whether it be intentionally or not, whether it be directly or not, because of other people. And the thing about our society as of right now, at least that I've been noticing recently, is that everything that we have right now, everything that we've built, all the technological advancements, they're almost always a result of our psychological systems, not the other way around. The technology that we create isn't making these things happen. These things already happen. It's stuff that we already did, but the ease of access with new technology like the internet just made it easier. You see people say this a lot with social media, and I, once again, kind of used to have the stop process, at least before. Like, social media did this to us, social media did that to us, social media caused this. And when you really break it down and get to the nitty-gritty of it all, you realize, no, not really. We did these things before. Social media just made the function thrive even better. It's just a result of what we make exploiting these psychological systems. They ended up doing the same thing with things like TikTok, this short form content, and everyone's talking about attention span and this, that. We constantly need stimulation. I mean, our brain always needed stimulation. That was never a bad thing. But now the companies understand that we need it. They understand how our brain works and they use it against us because now we're getting too much, and not even with necessarily good forms of content. So this is years of change, years of evolution, and years of growth that caused us to be how we are. All capitalism did is see the pattern and capitalize on it. They exploit the psychological systems. They didn't cause anything. They didn't create anything. These are things that we just are as human beings. But when you understand how something works, like a lot of these businesses and corporations do, they can easily exploit it. The systems itself, meaning our systems as humanity, is not the issue. It's a lack of regulation. Validation itself is not the issue. It's the lack of regulating where you get that validation from, what you're willing to sacrifice, how you're willing to bring down other people, bring down yourself. That's where the problem lies. So bringing it back to the trends I was talking about in the very beginning of this video, the sole purpose of these types of videos, little snacking or pretty ice cubes and whatever other like seemingly meaningless, I guess. I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I mean like meaningless in a way like it purely is just for entertainment, and I feel like it's a very random thing to do. Things like that are almost always for the sole purpose of getting attention. It's just gotten to a point where people seem to be trying to seek it in every aspect of their lives, and that's where the extremism comes in. Again, making little snack tins full of like 2 almonds and cheese, or making pretty ice cubes, those are not necessarily problematic ways to get attention. Like, okay, whatever. They're more tame, a little confusing, but tame nevertheless. But that doesn't mean it can't apply to more harmful, more problematic trends in other ways that people are once again trying to seek approval and validation in bad ways. We need to target that then. We need to target the trends that are causing this issue. We need to target the root cause of a person and their insecurities and why they feel like they need to go do everything that they can to get validation from like every human being on the earth, right? Like that's what we need to target. But what we don't need to do is demonize wanting validation as a whole. When we do that, we are rejecting something that is just naturally what makes us human. Suppressing something that's a natural function and making it seem like it is a criminal act can be dangerous for us in the long run. As long as we're hyper aware of ourselves, of where we're trying to get validation from, who we're trying to get it from, how we're trying to get it, as long as we stay aware of that and regulate it, then it won't really be that big of a problem. Silly little trends here and there and little cringe things we find on the internet are not really a huge issue. They're a little strange, sure, I'm not gonna sit here and lie. A little bit weird, but not necessarily problematic. I feel like when it comes to that department, we've got bigger fish to fry. But anyways, that's all I wanted to talk about for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.